Alright, so it's been a minute since my last YouTube video, but in today's video, I'm going to be going over how I use deep work and deep study blocks to be 10 times more productive. Now, this is something that I've been doing for the past 2 to 2.5 years now, and it basically started when I started running my ad agency. And I realized that I needed a way to be able to balance all these different modes in my life. And if you guys know me, I'm a student entrepreneur. I needed a way to be able to balance those, different phases that I went through. So, studying in the evening, for example, running my business during the daytime. And I just didn't really have an efficient way to plan things out until I stumbled across deep work. And it's just a very systematic way to block out certain periods of your day to really just get stuff done and really just buckle down, distraction free. And by the end of it, you can pretty much condense what would normally take an average person, say 4 hours to complete, into really an hour to an hour and a half's focused deep work. Now, before we get into the most important parts of the video, I just wanted to define two key terms here. The first term is a session. And what that is for me is just a prolonged period of consecutive work blocks, which is the second word that I wanted to define. It's just a prolonged series of work blocks where you're solely concentrated on one mode of being. So let's say you have a full-time job and you're trying to start up a side business. Your job is obviously, its own time during the day, but then when you do your session, you're focused on your side hustle and nothing else. So I think a better way to put this is if you were, let's say you traded stocks and you also had let's say you were a YouTuber as well, right? Basically what a session ensures is that you're not mixing up the stock trading and the YouTube videos, for example. And the reason why I say this is I don't really like decision fatigue. I don't really like having to switch between modes way too often because it just takes me out of that state of flow. And so a session is just a period of 3 to 4 hours, basically, that's solely focused on one mode of being. And those sessions can be divided up into different work blocks. Now, what a work block is, or study block, but what a block in general is a shorter period of time that precedes a break. I think that's the best way to put it. And a work block typically for me is around 50 minutes on, just super focused on whatever it is I'm doing, and then around a 10 minutes break. But it's also a little bit variable depending on what activity I'm doing. So for work blocks where I'm working on my agency, I'm very strict with the 50 minutes on and then 10 minutes off structure. Now, with studying on the other hand, if I'm doing a study block, it really depends on what I'm working on. So if I'm doing some light active recall or if I'm going through some lectures, I want to make it imperative to stop at the 50-minute mark. Whereas if I were working on a very, very intense problem set and I'm just on a roll, I'm just on this 5 correct answer streak, I don't really want to stop myself sometimes, because if I'm mid-set, I'm mid-problem, and then the 50-minute alarm rings, it's kind of annoying and it takes me out of that zone, as I mentioned. Whereas I don't really find that I deal with that problem as much when I'm doing business work or if I'm just reviewing certain things. And so the only exception really that I make is if I'm doing very intellectually engaging work and I don't want to be stopped in the middle of it. But for the most part, my work blocks are around 50 minutes long. Now, I think the interesting part here is that a lot of people tend to listen to music when they do deep work. And I probably only listen to music half the time. And if I do feel the urge to listen to something, I usually either listen to atmospheric / binaural beats, or I listen to just some really simple lo-fi, no lyrics at all, because I find that that just really takes away from your focus. And I also recommend wearing some sort of noise canceling headphones. And just for reference, my set of headphones are these ones right here. These are the, I believe, Sony WH-1000XM3, if I remember correctly. And I've been using these for, I think, a year and a half now. Very, very useful, very durable as well, and just really high sound quality, really, really good noise canceling abilities. But sometimes it's just kind of too bulky for me. And for whatever reason, if I'm feeling fatigued during the work block, I just don't really want to wear this big bulky set of headphones. So my alternate to that is my pair of AirPods 2. And it's very convenient, especially if I'm doing business work, because if I have a call coming up right after an intense work session, I'm easily able to switch through different devices. Or let's say if I'm on a break and I don't want to, pop on my Bluetooth speaker, then I can just switch from my laptop to my iPad to any other device that I use. Now, when it comes to my phone, in most cases, I turn it off. But if for whatever reason I do need to use it, first off, most of my apps have notifications turned off anyway, because I think a lot of notifications are just genuinely unnecessary. But just to make sure that I'm not being distracted, I obviously just turn on Do Not Disturb mode. I don't know if you guys can see this here, but it's just the crescent moon shaped icon. And it's just a way, again, for me to ensure that I'm not being bombarded by different stimuli when I'm working. Now, one thing to keep in mind with my work and study blocks is that I try to keep a healthy balance between auto-regulation and not disturbing my flow state. And this just goes back to what I was saying earlier, which is with a lot of business work, like if I'm building out a client funnel or if I'm writing some emails, I won't really feel a big loss in momentum if I stop at the 50-minute mark and there's still a little bit of work left. Whereas if I'm working through a very complex problem set and I'm on this really, really important train of thought and then I get cut off by a 10-minute break, not only might I feel an urge to procrastinate because that work was so intense, and I might end up taking a break that was way longer than I expected, like scrolling through my phone and just doing a bunch of random stuff. I don't want that. But also, again, it just takes away from that momentum so that by the time I come back to my desk, either I don't feel as motivated or I'm just not on that same train of thought, that same level of just really, really intense mental focus. My point is, I just don't want to make work blocks so small that number one, my momentum feels cut off, and number two, I'm incentivized to procrastinate because I give myself a little mental pat on the back and I tell myself, oh, you've worked enough, when in reality, not really the case. Now, I think a question that I get a lot is whether I eat or drink anything during my work blocks. And the answer is not really. I don't really try to consume anything. I think water and coffee are fine, but mostly I just try to stick to water during the work blocks. And then if I need to, I can have a small coffee in between the breaks. So I don't really even have any sort of food, not only during the work blocks, but not even during the breaks in between. Now, with my work environment, I try to keep it as uncluttered as possible. And the reason for that is, if I have a desk that's just littered with small objects and papers and pens and pencils, it's just really not desirable for me to work in. I want to feel as though I have a lot of ample space to move around, to manipulate certain items. And I just really want that feeling of blank slate and getting down to work. And again, I feel as though just having too much stuff takes away from that focus, provides me with too many stimuli. Now, just a few last tips before we wrap this video up. My first tip is always try to get a meditation session in before a work session. Not only is a work session very intensive, you're working for 3-4 hours almost consecutively, except for the small breaks in between, but it's also almost like you're a professional athlete. And I think it's best to think of yourself this way if you're serious about school, business, whatever it is you're working on. And you're almost getting yourself into a routine. And if you look at old Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Michael Phelps footage, all of them have their own unique warm-ups, their own unique routines before a big game or event. And it's the same with meditation. For me, it's a very easy way to get into that flow state or to prime myself for it, because it's basically the same actions over and over. And even if you're doing guided meditation, you're still meant to focus on the breath in most cases. You're still meant to clear your mind and just to be very accepting of whatever difficulties may lie ahead or you may be already dealing with. And then meditation is also proven to help with cognitive function in general. And a lot of studies have been done on this. I'm gonna go ahead and link these down below in the description as well. But it's proven to increase things like attention span, memory capacity, and just active recall capacity. And these things have been shown to have a direct correlation to student GPA. So if you're taking your studies seriously, if you really want to buckle down and get real work done as a student, definitely recommend meditation as a proper tool in your toolkit. I also try to exercise before morning work or study sessions as well, because it helps me release some endorphins, helps me get into the right mindset, and also release some of that restless energy that I don't want. during my work or study blocks. Now, during your breaks, do try to get up off your chair, because the last thing that at least I'd want to be doing is just being sedentary for 3-4 hours straight. And big tip is to try to stay off your phone, because then again, more stimuli, more things to be making decisions with, and just overall a very, very big distraction. I think it's very self-explanatory. Now, my last tip is to please try to get a good night's sleep beforehand, because I really don't want to be slamming down 3-4 cups of coffee throughout the day. It's just not really sustainable, and my caffeine tolerance is low enough. In general, I just don't want to be trying to do deep work while I'm in zombie mode. It's much better at that point to just take the day a little bit easier, take my foot off the gas a little bit, recover, get a good night's sleep, and then get back to full capacity the next day. So go to bed at a constant, reasonable time, and then also take a couple minutes the night before to straighten out your desk, get anything in place that you need, and then make sure you have a proper work environment the next morning. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please go ahead and leave a thumbs up, and then also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please write them in the comment section below. And I look forward to helping you guys out and coming back with the next video. Take care, guys.